We just heard a revelation from Congress, and it's already infuriating millions of Americans across the country. So the United States debt is sitting at $34 trillion right now. Now, this debt continues to rise as we speak. But even with this gigantic amount, the United States and its government, it still manages to talk about money for other countries. Forget about Social Security, SSI, and even SSDI. Forget about all of those on low income or homeless veterans. Forget them all. What we need to do right now, according to the Biden administration, is to funnel billions of taxpayer dollars on over to countries like Israel and the Ukraine. But of course, we can say that it's money going to people who need it though, right? And I know for a fact that there are people out there that still lend out money even though they themselves may be in debt. The problem here for experts is that our government isn't necessarily using their money. Their wages and their benefits, they're all intact, which has led many experts to say that they're only generous with our money. However, if we were to grab the money that's in their pockets, oh, then that's a totally different story. But since they're using our money, then it's much easier to give it away. So let's go ahead and break this budget down, all right? So $95 billion, that's what the Biden administration is asking for so that Ukraine can continue to fight Russia. Now, it's also going to fund Israel in their war and also provide them with what they need. Now, out of that $95 billion, a whopping $60 billion is going to none other than the Ukraine. However, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And guys, before we get into this, all I ask is that you take 1 second, drop a quick like for the video. I totally appreciate you. And I want to thank you so much for sharing this video. You guys are amazing. So out of the $60 billion, $20 billion is set to go to the replenishment of the U.S. military weapons and equipment. These will then move the Defense Department inventory onto the front lines of Ukraine. Now, I want you to think about that for a second, right? Who do you think makes money in that situation? Defense contractors right here in our country. So this would likely be companies like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon Technologies or RTX, Boeing, and probably even General Dynamics. Now here's something that may not already be obvious, but let me tell you anyway. So these companies, they donate to our politicians, and it's not just a few $100 here and there. They donate in a huge, great big way. So back in 2022, Raytheon Technologies, one of the biggest defense contractors here in the country, they donated to 30 lawmakers across Congress. They did the exact same thing for several leadership, political action committees, and national party committees. Now, why do you think that they would do that? Well, they donated it back at a time when Congress was debating on sending a new round of weapons and other military aid to the Ukraine. This was confirmed through a filing with the Federal Election Commission. After the donation, what do you know? The bill passed. $40 billion worth of taxpayer money to buy Ukraine weapons. $51,000 was spread out into contributions to 30 different lawmakers, 8 of which were seated in the House Armed Service Committee. Could that be a coincidence? Critics and analysts agree that this is the game that they're playing. They're funding the Ukraine with taxpayer money and they're receiving incentives from these defense contractors. It's kind of like a little bit of a give and take. And yes, just to confirm, they donated to both Democrats and Republicans. They also gave a separate donation to then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Now, speaking of Nancy Pelosi, there's about 20 federal lawmakers that have personally invested their money into Raytheon Technology or Lockheed Martin stock. Now, this has led many critics to believe that some form of insider trading may have been going on since these stocks for these defense contractors have almost doubled in value since the year 2020.
But there was a lot of trading happening on Capitol Hill as tensions ramped up with Russia. Our team here at CNBC dug through financial disclosures from members of Congress and found more than a dozen reported trades, either their own or by their spouse or child, in companies that are directly affected by the war. Names like Raytheon, Chevron, Occidental Petroleum, and CrowdStrike. Overall, CNBC estimates total activity at $7.7 million since February the 1st. The bulk of that was in energy and utility stocks. Second was cybersecurity, followed by defense. And the action is happening on both sides of the aisle, though it is pretty lopsided. Republicans reported $7.4 million in trades, Democrats $332,500. Now, these aren't necessarily all winning bets. Lawmakers or their spouses sold shares in Lockheed, NextEra Energy, and L3 Harris Technologies on the day that Russia invaded Ukraine. Since then, those stocks are all up double digits. But even the appearance of a conflict of interest is what is driving that push to ban Congress from trading in individual stocks. We reached out to every lawmaker on that list, Shep, and each one that got back to us said their investments are managed by an outside advisor. And some even told us they support tightening those rules on trading.
But here's the best part though, right? That's just the first $20 billion. The next $14 billion? Well, that's going to Ukraine for them to purchase weapons and equipment from the United States firms. You see how all this is coming along, right? Now, it's also very surprising to know that less than $500 million will be used to help those displaced by the war. Now, the exact same thing could be said for the $14 billion being sent to Israel and around $8 billion to Indo-Pacific nations. Now, the focus of this budget is on weapons, a budget that goes right back around to politicians here at home. Kind of like ring around the rosy. They're not going to get billions of dollars, but they're for sure going to get donations from these contractors. Because at the end, the game is simple. Stay in office, stay in power, continue to enrich your donors. That's the idea. And then, of course, there's the talk about politicians possibly taking part in insider trading. I suppose you could make a pretty penny out of that too. Now, you might think that this is all just too much and we're bordering into conspiracy theories here, but the truth is actually much worse. More than 20 Republicans backed this $95 billion budget. Now, out of those people, more than half are funded by defense contractors. Do you feel as if this is a coincidence? And just to make it abundantly clear what's happening here, let's go all the way back to 2022. I know, a whole 2 years back, but stick with me. So the top 5 weapons contractors here in our country collectively made $196 billion in 2022. That year alone, Lockheed Martin made $63 billion. Raytheon Technologies was second and made $40 billion in revenue that same year. Now, since the year 2000, the same 5 top weapons contractors from our country have sat within the top 7 of the rankings when it comes to revenue. These companies are, unsurprisingly, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, RTX, or Raytheon Technologies, Boeing, and General Dynamics. Lockheed Martin has made the most money that year and relied on 96% of its total revenue from our tax dollars. The write-up from 2022 also says that the numbers from that year probably doesn't mean that these companies will continue to hit high records. The only reason that they saw a surge was the Ukraine-Russia war. And that war, well, it's still going on today. This matches the narrative that was set in 2022 because the sale of U.S. military equipment to foreign governments, it spiked by 16% in 2023. Now, this again shows a profitable year for the same players: Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, and Northrop Grumman. Now, according to the U.S. State Department, military equipment sales to overseas, it hit a record $238 billion. In fact, direct military sales by U.S. companies, it soared to $157.5 billion. And this was fiscal year 2023. It was only $153.6 billion in 2022. Sales arranged from the U.S. government rose from $51.9 billion in 2022 to $80.9 billion in fiscal year 2023. This is what many experts are talking about now, that these wars are not about freedom or nation sovereignty. It's not about helping the people of a specific country. Experts say that it's all about keeping the same people in power so that the wheels can keep turning and pockets can continue to be filled. Which brings me to Senator Jon Tester. So it came out last year that Senator Jon Tester received campaign contributions that totaled over $160,000 from employees and committees representing the defense industry. This was after he became the chair of the Senate Defense Appropriations Committee in 2021. There was even a point last year where Tester received donations from 49 Lockheed Martin executives and lobbyists, people that have never donated to him in the past. They collectively gave his campaign around $50,000. These donations also came in very conveniently when Congress was set to talk about military spending. Now again, it could all be just a huge coincidence, but critics and analysts alike, they're saying that's just not the case. So what do you guys think about this? Now, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to continue to bring you guys the updates that you guys need to know about. Before I go, I want to thank y'all for hitting the like button. Thank you for sharing this video, and I'll see you on the next one.